the Good Girl Podcast. I am Cameo King, your host. The Good Girl Podcast is a podcast that is redefining the good through uncomfortable truths. I call those uncomfortable truth confessions. And so every week we have someone on with a confession, and the goal is to heal, to liberate, and for you to walk in your authenticity. Okay, I'm done. I have had coffee. I have had coffee. But that is going to make this show so fun. Excited about today's topic, and it is none other than my homegirl, Dani Moore in the building.
What it do, boo? What's happening?
If you don't know anything about Dani, she is a licensed mental health therapist. She is the practitioner, I want to call you the chief practitioner in charge at the Refresh Wellness Center, where her focus is telehealth therapy. And I think that's something that's been kind of a buzzword over the past year, going into almost like a year and a half because of COVID. But this is something you've done since the inception, since the beginning of the Refresh Wellness Center, because you understood the importance of therapy and community. And essentially now when you go into church and you don't want to see your therapist that know all your business.
Correct.
So, Dani, excited to have you back. It's been a minute. Hey, girl. Hey.
Hey, girl. Hey. I miss you, friend. Hey, Good Girl Podcast. I missed y'all. How y'all been doing? Have y'all been drinking your water? Have you been minding your business? Have you been exercising? What have you been doing? I want to know.
I've been trying to mind my business that pays me. Mind the business that pays you.
Mind the business that pays you.
So I want to introduce something slightly new to the beginning of the podcast. And it's really is to bring us into the present moment. I think it is so important to be in the present moment and potentially also cast the vision for the week. But we're going to do it in a fun way. And so every guest, I'm going to challenge them with a song, right? That will either cast the vision for the week that's coming or the month that's coming, or that describes your previous week. But the thing about it, they only have 5 seconds for me to catch on and sing along. Catch on and sing along. And I have to do the same.
Okay.
So it's whatever's on your heart. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds. And when that 5 seconds hit, you got to start singing. Sing from your soul, Dani, from your soul.
Sing from my soul. I have to sing. I think
you can rap. You can rap.
Rapping I can do.
So here we go. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Please don't get me hype. I'm hype. Right, my name is Ice.
Don't argue with these ladies. What?
I just raised my price. I'm feeling bossy. And so, and I'm feeling hyped. So I feel like, that's the season that I'm in right now. So please don't get me hyped.
I'm hyped.
I am all the way hyped for what's going on, what is to come. And I'm just trying to stay in a good headspace so that I can continue to push through.
I feel you. I don't want you to say that like in a public space and I'm in the audience, because I will yell it out from the back.
Absolutely.
Don't get me.
I'm hyped. That is, and if you know us, this is kind of our theme. Please don't get me hyped. I'm hyped.
Right. So I'm gonna do one. Okay. You gonna count me down, Dani? You gonna count me down?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here I go again, girls. What's my weakness?
Man.
Okay,
then chilling, minding my business.
And I couldn't believe this. I swear. Okay, because I can sing this whole song. The reason this is my song for the week, because I have been encouraged by connecting with some men, like some good, what I consider to be good men. They have reinvigorated, almost in a sense, my desire for dating and my hope that there actually are some decent men out there, right? So that's where my headspace is.
Okay.
That's where my headspace is. That's where it is. It's like, no. So What are we talking about today? And so this actually kind of goes along with the theme. And we are talking about why women are responsible for carrying the weight of men's issues. That's kind of a heavy one, right? Why women are responsible for carrying the weight of men's issues. And so what I don't want this to be divisive. I don't know the correct pronunciation, but because I think there's a lot of media, a lot of rhetoric out there that places one group of people against the other group of people. And that's what I don't want to do. What I really want to do, hopefully in this conversation, is to reveal to both men and women and individuals that a lot of times, that our behaviors are connected to deeper issues, and that those issues oftentimes aren't addressed, and they're just affirmed by the same rhetoric. They're affirmed by these same dating styles. They're affirmed by just a lot of things that we circulate on these internet streets that really aren't healthy, right? They're not healthy for either party. And I'm so glad Dani is here with her expertise and understanding very much the ramifications of our relationships, our social circles, and just how we show up in relationships, just how our issues show up in relationships. So, Dani, when you first hear that phrase, why women are responsible for carrying the weight of men's issues, what do you think? What do you think?
Quite honestly, we've had previous conversations about it, and I believe it was me who articulated it in that phrase. Is that, it seems to me that when women historically have been responsible for carrying the weight of men's issues, and we are expected to absorb whatever their shortcomings are in order to be in relationship with them. Our entire lives and livelihood is supposed to be shaped around our value and our value to a man and what we can do for a man, how we can be of service to him, how we can mother his children and be his wife and take care of his domestic needs. And then when men are vulnerable or not vulnerable, when men are promiscuous, when men are sexually aggressive, when men are aggressive in any type of way, when men mishandle women in any type of way, the responsibility of that is always placed on the woman. The question is always, what did you do? What did you do to trigger him? Or what aren't you doing that has triggered him? There's always historically has been a lack of accountability for men to accept responsibility for their own behavior and it not be based on what a woman is or isn't doing.
Yeah. So I wanted to break this down into 3 areas, basically. So how does this show up? How is this true, right? Because I think a lot of times we say stuff, we throw things out there, we don't provide any proof, right? We throw opinions out there and we take it as true. And so I broke it down into 3 areas. One is submission, the other is money. And then the last is what I hear often, and which is what I think is really damaging. But it's this idea, and I typically only hear it from men, right? Or young men. I don't want to insult folks, so I'm just going to say men or young men. And it's packaged in, this is the worst advice possible, right? So I want to play a little clip for you, but we're not going to talk about this until the end. But I'm going to play a little clip. And Dani hasn't, she hasn't seen this clip. So Dani may throw the computer, after she sees this.
I mean, if you're not wanting me to react to this right away, are you sure you want me to play?
Just listen. Here we go.
And the worst dating advice that women receive goes as the following. You're young. Don't worry about men. Chase your career, chase the bag, build your empire, and then later on in your 30s, the men will come. That is the worst dating advice women receive. And I get so many DMs, emails.
I'm surprised that I made it through the rest of the video, right? And so I have a part 2 of the clip. But that's, I think, a part of what started this conversation. But we're going to talk about that later. So just hold that if you can, Dani. Just hold that if you can, if you're listening, folks, because we're gonna go into that later. But again, when we talk about why women are responsible for carrying the weight of men's issue, when I think about control and submission, I typically only hear the word submission in terms of a relationship with men who have not developed a healthy self-identity. And in other words, they are looking to, I'll say, fulfill, or they're looking to solidify their identity in a woman's submission to them. So in a sense, therefore, because I am man, or I am man because a woman submits to me, not I am man because I stand alone as a man. And these are the standards I have for manhood. And I think that that is connected to control, because if this woman doesn't necessarily submit to you, if she doesn't do what you desire, and I don't know if that's how everyone defines submission, and maybe we can go into that. But when I hear submission colloquially, that's typically, I think, how most people hear it, right? They don't hear it in a way that I think it is really practical in a marriage. And when I say practical in a marriage, I just posted this randomly on my Facebook page, and I asked, for married couples only, to tell me, what does submission look like in a marriage? And all of the answers from married couples said submission looks like both parties submitting to a common goal, not the woman submitting to the man. But when they say goal, it's for the success of a marriage. So understanding that there are multiple parts to a marriage, right? You have the individual, you have one individual, two individuals, and then you have this marriage. So what do we need to do to ensure that this marriage is successful? What do we need to do individually to make sure that this marriage is successful? And so that is my understanding of submission. I guess I'll call it collective submission, but we're not gonna go there. But so when there is this almost overarching theme, this very intentional conversation from men to women, especially early on in the dating process, about submission, to me, it very much connects to control, because your identity is rooted in how a woman performs. And if that said woman doesn't perform that connects to your idea of your ideal of what it means to be a man, then you're shook, right? I'm not a man. And so therefore you try to control how she shows up through submission, so your identity is solidified. That's how I feel. Dani, I don't know about you though.
I mean, I think what you just explained really boils down to insecurity. If a man is insecure in his manhood, he will seek to control. Or if a man has experienced trauma where he feels like he hasn't been heard or like he doesn't have a voice, he will look for something to have dominion over. Men like to have dominion. They've been groomed and cultured to have dominion. And so sometimes there's a fine line between having dominion and having control over someone. And when you have insecurities, you lean more into that. I have to be in control, even if it's in a perverse or inappropriate way. And so if, a man is feeling insecure about his manhood or himself, and his manhood is secured by external factors instead of internal factors, then he's going to seek to control his environment and his relationships.
Yeah. When you say that manhood and internal factors, it really directly very much connects back to our last podcast when we had a man on, Emery Lawrence. He was talking about how manhood was defined for him, and he was essentially taught all the wrong things that equated manhood, and how you really do have to seek internally what satisfies your soul outside of money, power, respect. What are some of those things? Money, power, respect. Let's go into money. Money, power, respect. What you need in life. Money, power, respect. You eat in life. Money, respect. you'll see the light. So money. Now, I began to have this conversation because honestly, there was an expectation I had about how a man should show up financially in a relationship. And when I say relationship, I'm specifically talking about marriage. Like, what should he be responsible for? And I had this, I'll call it eye-opening, or you can call it humbling conversation with my brother about my expectations. But it wasn't that it was more so asking myself, is this a good expectation to have? Should I have this expectation of a man? And it was about mortgage, right? My stomach is kind of sinking because I feel like I was really wrong in having this expectation. But it was, I think it's because I was connecting this idea of protection and safety to a man taking care of like the mortgage, and that is my expectation. And so having this conversation, let's speed this up, having this conversation with another friend, she was essentially saying, well, you have to understand, this is how men are raised. This is what men want to do. Like, they want to be able to provide. They want to be able to be the breadwinners in the home. And so we as women have to then reconsider essentially how much money we make, how we're moving up the corporate ladder. Like, in a sense, when I am successful, we have to consider how that is going to affect how a man shows up in our relationships. And I was like, really? Because I expect to be a high earner. And which led me to the conversation about, is that for real? I asked my brother, is that for real? And I asked you, Dani, is that real? And what did you say?
I don't remember exactly what I said.
So I'll tell you.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'll tell you what you said. You said it's control. My brother said it's control. That's what it comes down to. That's what it is. Like, a man who doesn't want you to be successful, a man who wants to limit your success, be it moving up the corporate ladder, be it expanding your brand, or if it's something as direct as you making more money than him, that is control. And that's what it comes down to.
Yep, control. But again, back to insecurity, because if you feel insecure and you want to be in control and you're still functioning from this space of me and you instead of us, it doesn't matter who makes the most money if it's all ours. It doesn't matter which pot of money the mortgage is coming from if it's all ours. So that whole line of thinking is problematic. I understand that you're just like, if, I show up to the table and me as a woman, I am a high earner and I make more than you, and you earn whatever it is that you earn, and the money to pay mortgage is coming from my account. I mean, I think, again, for men, they are wired to, well, not wired, they're groomed. They have been groomed to believe that they are supposed to be the breadwinners. They are supposed to be, the king of their castle. And they do, for most men, they do feel a way when they aren't able to provide in that way. But not being able to, there's a difference between not being able to provide in that way and the woman just makes more money than you. Like, there's a difference there.
When we were having this conversation off screen, we talked about other ways that men provide. And it was really connected to being needed, right?
Yeah.
This idea that men needs to, I'm like, oh yeah, who doesn't want to, who doesn't want to feel needed, especially the person you're in the relationship with. But if the only reason I need you is to pay my bills, that's problematic.
It's a transactional relationship. It's prostitution with a legal license, is what it is. And that's what far too many people are in, those type of relationships where they are just with someone who is essentially paying their bills. And no shade, like, I'm not, this isn't a space of judgment, but the reason why, women who are high earners and have their careers and have more going for themselves by the time they actually end up in a marriage or a relationship. The reason why it gets more challenging for them because, you know, they're not with someone based on their perceived needs or their deficits. And you have a lot of people who set themselves up to be in relationships in this way. There are a lot of men who want you to be completely dependent on them so that they can have control over what you do, where you go, how you flow, all of those things, instead of allowing you to be who you are and show up the way that you're supposed to show up. That becomes problematic only for, again, men who are insecure. When men are self-aware and secure with themselves, they still may have a need to be needed, but it's not always connected to money. You know, I need for you to do the things for me that money can't buy. Now, let me be clear. I need you to do some things that money can't buy. I like those things too. I'm not saying that I don't, but if I show up in this relationship where I'm able to secure my own livelihood, you don't ever have to worry about me wanting to be with you. I'm with you because I want to be with you, not because I need for you to provide for me financially. Too many people are in relationships where they are being tolerated and they end up being mishandled and mistreated by their partner. You're in a relationship because for one reason or another, it may not have started out that way, but the situation that you're in right now, you may not be able to leave it because it's uncomfortable for you. Just even counseling some of my couples right now and some of my clients, you know, and where, you know, someone is just like, you know, I want to leave the relationship, but I know I can't afford to live here, or I can afford to live here, but things will be really tight and it won't be as comfortable as it is. Or I want to leave the relationship, but I don't want to, you know, break up our family unit and want there to be issues with our kids. But then your kids are watching you all be toxic toward each other. Like, you know, there's all these different type of things going on where you have people who have grown apart for one reason or another. And you're in relationships where you need the other person, you rely on them, you're dependent upon them in some way, shape, or form. And it just causes the relationship to deteriorate even more.
The other component that you brought up when you talk about these dynamics was also how Black women are oftentimes left holding the bag, because we put ourselves in these positions where we are dependent financially on a man.
So for any woman who is in a relationship where children are born, there's going to be a point in time where she has to be taken care of by a man. That's just what it is. Like, there's only so much you can do physically, right? You're going to have to be taken care of at some point in time. And there's no getting around that. And so you want to be with someone who you trust, who actually has the capacity to take care of you if y'all have decided to bring children into the relationship. But for Black women, it's a very complex situation from both ends, because let's just talk about the reality of being a Black woman in a relationship and not being able to trust that your partner is going to be there. You can have a partner who is faithful, who loves you, who adores you, who supports you, and who is collecting the bag. And your partner can still be taken away from you at any given point in time, especially a Black man, by just being a Black man in America, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the police feel like ending his life. That is a very real fear. Or the police feel like harassing him and trumping up some charges, making up charges, doing anything to get him to be a part of the criminal justice system where slavery is still legal, right? And so it doesn't matter if you start out very well intentioned with your Black man. there is an extremely high likelihood that you are going to be a single parent at some point in the relationship. And so when you find Black families who are together, the couple made it, and it's been years down the line, it's like, man, like, that's just awesome. It's awesome. It's awesome to see. But, I'm not going to say their names, but one of my very dear friends, beautiful marriage, beautiful family, has been married for over 20 years, been together since they were teenagers. And now, her kids are grown, and now she has grandkids, and, they got an Instagram family, and they're real cute. But there was a point in time where her husband was snatched from her when they were young and was in prison. And she waited for him, and they had a young son. And then he got out and built his brand and his business. And she's been working where she's been working. And, their family is beautiful and together. And that's how the story is ending, per se. But for a lot of people, it's flip-flop. You might have started out with everything on the front end, and then your husband is snatched from you, or your partner is snatched from you, and then you don't have them on the back end. And it's not this, growing old together, or they were taken, or, getting lost to death because of health issues. They also had a health scare that he just happened to catch because he was pressing about it. Doctors wasn't checking for it, just anything, and so like there's a very real situation with Black women when it comes to these relationships where we end up getting left holding the bag and being by ourselves. So to have all of this scrutiny around us being independent, around us making our own money, around us acquiring credentials, around us showing up to the table because we own the table, and not being, restricted to a pie mentality because we got the recipe and we baking whole pies. We don't need a piece of the pie. We got the recipe. We can make as many pies as we want. To have all of this scrutiny around us being go-getters and it being weaponized against us as less desirable, being less desirable partners is the most asinine thing I've ever heard of. And I could talk all day about that.
I don't even want to play this clip now. The clip that we played earlier, because it leads right into that clip. And I don't know why a lot of us support this type of mentality. I understand why men support it because it helps fill that gap and that hole of insecurities. And it's easier to project that onto someone else than it is to actually go to therapy or get healing or look inside of yourself. But for women, I don't get it. I legitimately don't. Maybe it's because, too, we've been trained as well that our identity rests in a relationship, that our identity is only seen as good, as great, or as though you achieved the highest of highs when you have a family or when you are married, right? And again, I want to be clear that I'm not saying that you cannot aspire to that, but that is not the foundation of who anyone is. And you've said it consistently, and I'm paraphrasing, but if your identity is found in something outside of you, eventually you're going to have an identity crisis.
You sure are. You're going to have a breakdown and you're going to be in my office. If you are showing up and you are living, you're showing up as these fragments and pieces of yourself because you're living up to other people's ideas of you. Yeah. You are eventually going to crash and burn mentally and emotionally. And you're going to end up in crisis. You're going to end up stressed out, anxious, depressed, and end up bleeding on the people who didn't hurt you because you are out here trying to live up to, some idea that doesn't align with your core values or your true desired outcomes.
Your true desired outcomes.
Why not be in a place where you become self-aware and where you lean into what you want from yourself early on so that you are able to make better relationship choices. So many people make relationship choices based on superficial things and based on the wrong things. which is why far too many people end up divorced. And I'm just, in a place where in my own personal life and where I'm encouraging people, if you do the work up front, then you won't end up in divorce court later. Of course, there are some, you want to be attracted to the person, and there are some superficial things that help the relationship come together. Yes. But the substance is what's going to hold you together when when all of that superficial stuff fades, right? It's going to be the substance of a person that you need holding your hand when you have to bury your loved ones at some point. It's going to be the substance, of a person that you're going to need, that those vows that people say and don't mean for better or for worse, that people really don't mean for worse. When people hit worse, they roll out.
It wasn't this type of worse.
Yeah. Their for worse is, oh, you had cold today. their for worse is not, oh, it's that cold is because you have a terminal illness. It's not the same. The substance of a person and who they are at their core is who you want to make sure that you're aligned with, so that you guys have a positive synergy toward who you are supposed to be as individuals and collectively.
Yeah. So what I want to do is I want to play both of these clips again. And I want us to, because the narrative of both of these clips are so harmful to both men and women and individuals. It's so harmful. And so I want to play these clips and very much push back on it. So here we go. Here's the first one. I played this one earlier.
And the worst dating advice that women receive goes as the following. You're young. Don't worry about men. Chase your career. Chase the bag. Build your empire. And then later on in your 30s, the men will come. That is the worst dating advice women receive. And I get so many DMs, emails.
So that was the initial part. And now this is the second clip.
And the reason why it's so terrible advice is because that advice applies to men. It does not apply to women, because getting a career, getting the bag, building your empire are all masculine things. And those masculine things attract females, heterosexual females. Those things are going to attract. So when women are using the masculine strategy to attract a masculine man,
the first thing I said is, who raised
interesting to me.
Who raised y'all? Who raised y'all? Like, that was really my first question. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go.
These men, these insecure men who ascribe to toxic masculinity, who have platforms, are just really on my last nerve. Like, why, sir? Why? Like, it is so annoying to me that you have one set of men who are mad if you function from a place where you are expecting to be taken care of by a man and you want to be a housewife and such, right? Like, if like you're signing up for this, you don't really want to work. You want to be a housewife. You want to have kids. You want to, you want to just be a stay-at-home mom. And being a stay-at-home mom is a pretty big deal. So it's not just a stay-at-home mom. It's a whole 5 jobs. On the other hand, you have men who are bashing women for wanting to be taken care of. Then on the other hand, you're bashing us for getting out and securing the bed. Which one is it? Make up your mind. Like, y'all don't know what you're going to complain about what we do no matter what. It's always going to be some insecure man who ascribes to toxic logic on some platform with too much energy, too much bass in his voice, and too much of his insecurities and his little fragile manhood on display, where you are weaponizing women's strengths and calling it masculine. It's masculine for you to secure the bag.
What?
It's masculine for you to be an entrepreneur. Why is that a masculine thing? That's not masculine. That's just a thing. You attach your manhood to money and what you can provide. External things again. Okay. And so these are the same type of men who say stuff like, you won't let a man be a man. If your manhood is wrapped up in me showing up as fragments and pieces of myself, not being assertive, not being able to provide for myself. Where are you even getting this logic from? The Proverbs 31 woman, you can't say it's biblical. I mean, she was a whole boss. So where is this logic coming from? Where is it coming from?
But even if you follow the logic, Dani, so if I was on this train, it still makes no sense.
None.
Because if I followed the logic, and I couldn't bear through the entire video. So my homegirl sent it to me and she said, this is what we have to be aware of, because this is what we're fighting against, quote unquote, as women who want to empower women to walk in their authenticity, to be the best version of themselves. And so no. Even if I were to follow this logic, it would still very much leave women just out there. It's like just dangling and waiting, as though we're just waiting in a pool for men just to come and pick us up. So we are perfect and prepped and primed for their use. That's the thing about it. Like
for their use.
And that's it. Not for my enrichment, not for my fulfillment of life, not for me to reach my highest. And when we talk about purpose and we talk about wanting the ideal man don't want you just, and wait, before I say this, I don't like putting guidelines and rules out there because I believe there's so many nuances, so many different things that people want. But I do believe that there are some baseline things. For example, everyone has a purpose. Everyone has a purpose. Our purpose fulfills parts of our soul and our spirit that like nothing else can. It can bring us joy. It can bring us happiness. It can bring us peace. And some of these, it can connect us to God. And for a man to not want you to know that or to discover that at any point in your life, someone that you want to partner with, what is he really doing?
It's the real issue is far too many men don't even like women apart from what they can do for him.
Say a whole word.
They don't. They don't like to hear women think. They don't like to see women on the move. They don't like to see women be aggressive. That's masculine. It's for men to do. Oh, like your whole manhood is threatened because I make my own money. Who's supposed to take care of me?
What happens if something happens to you? God forbid.
Happens if something happens to you, sir? You're a black man in America.
God forbid if you are incapacitated for a month, right? And then I'm sitting there, don't know how to run the household, don't know where the bills and the money has come from, don't know nothing about nothing just because I'm prepped and
yes, very real situations. Someone's husband died last year and they didn't know how to do anything. They didn't know how to pay any bills. They didn't know what money came from where. They didn't know nothing. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, that person's husband was blind for probably the last 10, 15 years of their marriage.
Wow. When you talk about the content, oh, child. And so also I think what this narrative speaks to, it also I think it hits on the insecurities of women. And when I say that, so when you talk about like the physical appearance and what women supposedly bring to a relationship, but when I say insecurities and also these false narratives that we're told, narratives like this, like his, make it seem that happiness comes from a man. Happiness comes from a relationship. Should your relationship be a part of your happiness? Yes. Should your partner be a part of things that bring you joy? No doubt. But it is not the foundation. right? And conversations like he had very much positions the man as though he is holding like this life source that you can only
as if
get.
the world revolves around him. He is literally saying this is a man's world, but without the part that says, but it would be nothing without a woman or a little girl. You know, this man is a total and complete narcissist, and I'm willing to go ahead and say it. Don't write me. But men who function from that space, that's a narcissistic perspective, you know, where I don't want a woman who has the ability to do anything, because what that really equates to me is she can leave me at any given point in time, and she doesn't have to carry the weight of my lack of substance.
Yep.
She doesn't have to carry the weight of my shortcomings. She doesn't have to carry the weight of my bad sex that I think is everything. She doesn't have to carry the weight of my fragile masculinity and toxicity. She doesn't have to carry any of that because she doesn't need me financially. She can go out and secure her own bag, and she can get with somebody who actually has a bit more substance. Somebody said to me, they told me that this man said to them, our accomplishments erase our age. And I want to add to that, it also erases your shortcomings and lack of substance. When men are well-to-do, it doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter how young they are. There are always a whole host of women that are willing to tolerate whatever their shortcomings are. Yeah. There is no way a man as shallow as 45 would be able to marry a Russian model if it wasn't because of his resources and him being rich and powerful, so to speak. You don't have enough substance to keep anybody's attention in that way.
I think too, it connects to this conversation of high value men and how some people are really buying into, again, this narrative that, first of all, that you're putting value on human beings, which I think is trash. But I think it's a way to communicate what we have, what you just said, where there will be a line of women waiting for a man with these, I'll call them superficial characteristics.
Very superficial.
Money, height, good looks, but it's not. I didn't date this guy, but we were talking for a while, and it's as though, so I'll say this, it makes it as though that these type of men have all of the women at their disposal. Like all I have to do is go and pick. But let me tell you, you don't. It's a two-way street.
You don't have women. It is a two-way street. You don't have women of substance, and you don't have women who want to be about anything. Same boat. I was talking to this guy that I've decided just not to talk to him anymore because he's well-to-do. He has the shiny, flashy car. He's tall and fine, y'all. The man is fine. Fine black man. Jesus, he fine. But, oh God, he's so shallow. He's so shallow. He's probably one of the most shallow men that I've ever talked to. His communication sucks. You know, the way that he talks is very abrasive and condescending, and almost sounds like a little kid who doesn't have good vocabulary at all. And it's very frustrating to talk to somebody where it feels like you're dialoguing back and forth with a kid and you can't even have a regular conversation. And then on top of that, always has something negative to say.
And Dani, the thing about it, I've had that same experience. The guy who tried to come back around full circle, and I cut him off, but he tried to come back around full circle because he's looking for a wife. And he was like, Cameo, I always thought you were dope, yada, yada, yada. But and he has all the things I think that a quote unquote high value man would desire. And I've even seen some things that he's said on social media about women with children, how you are as valuable. And we've had conversations. He was like, no, I don't think I should be obligated, or I waited and I wrapped up. So why should I have to suffer, or why should I have to take care of another person's child? These are some of the things he said. And he And he considered himself high value because he was tall, because he had a degree, because he was very good with his money. He works in finances, and like he has like all these quote unquote ducks in a row. But the dude was trash. Like his character was complete trash.
And we're expected to absorb the weight and to carry the weight of his trash behavior and his lack of substance. And that's what this whole conversation is about. Yes. This conversation is about how women have historically had to be responsible for the shortcomings of men and for the lack of character, integrity, substance, etc. of men, and how if you value anything about yourself, your purpose, or your destiny, you don't have to ascribe to any of these toxic narratives. I know that it's very tempting to succumb to some of these things, especially the older you get. And, if you still find yourself single, it can be harder and make you feel like you may want to compromise or settle, but you'll just find yourself frustrated and you'll end up in a broken relationship. And so it's just my encouragement today that don't allow anyone to ascribe any negative labels to you. It is not up to a man to determine what your worth or your value is. And your value isn't determined by how you are connected to a man. You are valuable just as is. You are valuable because God decided that you needed to be on this earth during this time and in this season, the end. Nothing else. If there was nothing else, the fact that you have breath in your body makes you valuable, makes you enough. And if you are struggling in that area with self-worth or value, know that the very fact that you have breath in your body, you are valuable and you have a purpose to fulfill. And that purpose is not connected to how you can be of value to a man.
Not at all. Well, Dani, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. As always, I hope you all pulled something from this. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our podcast through whatever platform you get your podcast on. And also make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page and follow us on all social media. Thank you so much for listening to the Good Girl Podcast. And I hope you continue to believe in the good.